Are you aware of the true circumstances surrounding Angus Young? His mysterious letter at Wembley sparked rumors like wildfire, but it was just the start. Although fans believe it's simply aging catching up, there's more to it than that. Silence, abandonedly secret, and a choice that would permanently end AC/DC. Are you ready to discover something no one else will? Early in June 2025, a TikTok video from AC/DC's May 4th Power Up Tour performance at Gillette Stadium went viral on social media, putting the band in the middle of a melee. In the video, crowd noise almost drowned out Brian Johnson's voice, which led to a barrage of criticism. Supporters started to express doubts about the band's capacity to play as thrillingly as they had in the past. Several others called for the group to disband, saying that they were finally too old, instead of paying homage to rock history. Some people saw Angus Young duck walking in his signature schoolboy attire at the age of 70 as a reminder of the passing of time. It appeared worn out, according to critics. The argument was that leaving was preferable to the chance of being mediocre. The backlash was not, however, universal. The band's live appearance still exuded the kind of raw intensity that most up-and groups could only imagine, according to numerous others who defended them. Angus Young in particular received recognition for his unparalleled endurance and commitment. In spite of the criticism that went viral, supporters noted that ticket sales were still extremely high. It appeared that the numbers, which presented a completely different image, were unrelated to the alleged fall. In spite of the dispute, the statistics were sold. On June 26th, Ticketek revealed that over 370,000 tickets had been sold for all events, setting a new record. Over 1.7 million individuals were in line online. After a few towns sold out in a matter of hours, the organizers had to add more dates to accommodate the demand. An emotional, open letter to supporters was written by Angus in response to a sold-out Wembley show. The band posted the letter on their official website and social media accounts. Angus' letter is a thank you to the millions of fans who have supported the band for almost 50 years, as well as a tribute to their history. Many have hailed the band's Power Up World Tour performance at Wembley as a career-defining show full of sentimentality, raw energy, and heartfelt farewells. Angus said, "I thank you to all of my bandmates, past and present." In his letter, "The experience of a lifetime has been had. I want to express my gratitude to Brian, Phil, Stevie, and Cliff for participating in this amazing adventure, supporting me through the highs and lows, and giving it your all every night." With letters and recollections of how the band's music influenced their lives, fans from all across the world have responded with an abundance of thanks. The concert included a set list that spanned generations and included hits like Highway to Hell, Thunderstruck, and Back in Black. The twist that followed was even more startling. Angus admitted to close friends that 2025 would be his last year with AC/DC, a European tabloid reported. According to the research, the band experienced internal conflicts, creative weariness, and dissatisfaction with the corporate apparatus that now dominated a large portion of their operations. More than simply feelings were aroused by this open letter and the growing retirement rumors. They sparked intense curiosity in their supporters. How did things actually unfold behind the scenes? Did it have to do with aging or something far more intimate? We must investigate further in order to determine the true cause. There have been reports in recent months that Angus Young's time with AC/DC may come to an end in 2025, not because of his age or health, but rather because of a rivalry within the band over its essence. Industry insiders claim that there is an internal conflict, an unspoken conflict between corporations and creatives that has been simmering for years. The conflict, according to accounts from several sources, is caused by the band's management and labels' increasing pressure to follow contemporary trends. These include proposals for lifestyle items under the AC/DC brand, merchandise-driven touring methods, and influencer partnerships. These actions allegedly went against everything that Angus, a man renowned for his unadulterated stage intensity and old-school rock ethic, felt the band stood for. Angus has reportedly privately voiced his displeasure with the AC/DC brand's distortion, according to Reddit posts. Once natural, the image of gritty guitar solos and leather coats now ran the risk of being reduced to carefully chosen sponsorships and hashtags. Neither the band nor their record company have released a formal statement. In response to the commotion, only supposition has been stoked by this silence. Angus is quietly getting ready to leave, replacing industry pressure with integrity. Is this only a PR gimmick about a man attempting to change with the times? It's obvious that fans aren't inquiring about what's going on anymore. They want to know what precisely is happening behind the scenes. Rewinding the clock to the personal catastrophe that shook the core of AC/DC is necessary to comprehend how Angus got to this breaking point. On March 7, 2016, AC/DC was struck by a catastrophe that would permanently alter its trajectory. The legendary leader of the band, Brian Johnson, was given a dire warning by his physicians. They warned him that if he kept performing at stadium volume, he may suffer irreversible hearing damage. For a guy who had been influenced by music throughout his life, the news was devastating and startling. The diagnosis was more than simply a career-ending one. The loss was really personal. Removing himself from the stage was like losing a piece of Johnson. The band was confronted with an unavoidable decision because they still had rock or bust tour shows planned. Either cancel the remainder of the tour and incur losses of millions, or figure out a way to continue without their lead singer. The band's lead guitarist, and one of its original members, Angus Young, had to make the decision. Instead of calling it quits on the tour, he made contact with Axl Rose, who was a surprise. Guns N' Roses' erratic but formidable frontman, fans were shocked by the choice. Seeing a combination of rock legends thrilled some people. Those who believed that no one could replace Brian were incensed. Although the controversy was widely publicized in headlines and comment sections, the band was privately battling doubt and loss in the background. Later, when Brian talked about the emotional toll of leaving, he said it was like discovering a stranger in your own home. It was more than just missed performances. It was about being taken out of a position that was very important to him. But despite that heartache, the band continued to play. Axl was referred to by Angus as a lifesaver, thanks to his assistance in keeping AC/DC on course when things appeared to be going south. In 2014, they had a similar circumstance aside from this catastrophe. After leading their rhythm section for almost 40 years, Phil Rudd, the drummer, was jailed in New Zealand towards the end of 2014. The accusations were shocking and grave. He was charged by the authorities with methamphetamine and cannabis possession, in addition to trying to obtain a B**********. Rock's most disciplined band plummeting behind scenes was depicted in a chaotic manner in the narrative that dominated headlines. Ultimately, the attempted B********* charge was withdrawn, but the harm had already been done. Rudd entered a guilty plea in 2015 to drug-related charges and death threats. He received a home detention term of 8 months. It was the worst possible time for AC/DC. Their reputation as a band was based on their lineups, consistency as much as their renowned riffs and performances. Rudd was unable to go, so the band had to make a tough decision. A former drummer named Chris Slade, who had performed with them briefly in the early 1990s, took his place. Angus Young went through a difficult time as a result. Working with Phil, who had gotten harder even before the arrest, he subsequently acknowledged in an interview. Rudd was hard to get inside the studio. Making videos, promoting the album, and getting ready for the tour all got more difficult. It became evident that the drummer was facing more than simply legal issues. The release of Rock or Bust was carried out by AC/DC in spite of the criticism, yet something was lacking. Rudd's characteristic drumming technique was missing, and fans sensed the change, according to critics. There was a sense of impending change inside the band, but the tour continued. But Angus was determined not to let the legacy fall. As his older brother, Malcolm, the rhythm guitarist and co-founder of AC/DC, battled dementia in silence, he was totally intent on preserving the music. By 2020, Phil Rudd had formally returned to the group for Power Up, making his fall from grace a footnote. This record wasn't merely a form comeback. Malcolm had died in 2017, and it was a memorial to him. Emotion was prevalent throughout the recording sessions. Malcolm and Angus have worked on the same riffs for years. It was a risk to bring Rudd back into the mix, but it gave the record a sense of completion. With a familiar vigor, the band came together to focus their devotion and sorrow on a final, impactful effort. Angus Young remained strong despite all of these challenges that could have destroyed any band. Since he had already experienced storms that most people were unaware of, it wasn't simple. So what accounts for this unparalleled steadfastness and devotion? Let's recall the thrilling adventure that led Angus to this particular fork in the path. Angus Young had already cemented his status as one of the greatest musicians in history even before fans argued over his farewell bow. His impact extended beyond booming riffs and ferocious solos. It also involved redefining what it meant to be a rock musician. Stadiums weren't merely filled by his unrelenting energy, schoolboy stage presence, and piercing guitar tone. They were transformed. AC/DC reached a turning point in their history in 2003 as evidence of their influence on world music culture. The band was formally admitted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Angus personally collected the honor while wearing his signature school uniform. His inclusion with bands like Steven Tyler, The Clash, and the Ramones confirmed that he was the norm rather than just a member of the crowd. The critical acclaim didn't end there. Angus was rated the finest Australian guitarist of all time by Australian Guitar magazine in 2012, given the intense rivalry in the Australian rock scene. This award carried a lot of weight. He surpassed virtuosos like Ian Moss and Tommy Emmanuel, whose technical mastery had long ruled guitar circles. As a result of the victory, clean execution was not Angus's goal, though it was all about presence, feel, and wild emotion. He received the renowned Legend Award from Kerrang, the voice of hard rock and metal, back in 2006. This award, which acknowledged his contribution to the genre's identity, came from within the industry, in contrast to other fan-voted titles. By then, the world's conception of rock itself was inextricably linked to his image. You can probably see Angus in the middle of a stride, with his guitar slung low and perspiration dripping from his brow. Regardless of whether you grew up in the 1970s, 1990s, or even the streaming period. His impact extended beyond accolades and lists. From Slash to Dave Grohl, guitarists of many eras have acknowledged Angus as a significant influence. His gritty distortion and blues-inspired playing influenced current rock's rougher edge and even helped establish grunge and punk as sub. Even while these accomplishments are impressive, they were the result of years of stress, fatigue, and difficult personal choices. Angus's suffering was sometimes obscured by the glitz of prizes. Now, let me tell you about one of the most tumultuous nights during an Angus tour when an unforeseen event occurred. It's the kind of moment nobody discusses, something that might have ruined the whole show. Only the band witnessed the events in real time. Angus Young was engrossed in Bad Boy Boogie at a show in Arizona in the year 2000 when a fan committed the unimaginable. During the performance, he hurled a beer at him. The air went cold. Thousands of people observed, not sure what would happen next. Would Angus strike back? Would chaos break out on the show? Angus, however, did not recoil. Without saying a word, he approached the troublemaker, jiggled his nose, and met his eyes directly. It wasn't aggressive. It wasn't noisy. However, it was incisive, surprising, and authoritative. Angus then motioned security to intervene with a straightforward gesture. The crowd let up a yell, respect, not indignation. The band continued to play. The cadence remained steady. The moment made an impression, yet the concert continued as if nothing had occurred. This was not just a humorous onstage interaction. It became a famous illustration of how to gracefully put an end to chaos. The fan was not given power by Angus. With a quick judgment and a hint of humor, he snatched it away. That one action saved the evening and probably prevented the fan from receiving a much more severe response. This composed and nimble demeanor is not merely a performance technique, it's in Angus's blood. To appreciate that composure, you must return to the Sydney suburbs, where the youngest of the Young brothers was raised. Angus Young was born in March 1955 in Glasgow, Scotland, and was raised in a working-class household with his siblings and industrious parents, all of whom lived in a tiny apartment. There was usually a lot of commotion in the Young home, occasionally disputes, occasionally music, but always a lot of personality. William Young, his father, put in a lot of overtime as a factory worker and handyman. Margaret, his mother, kept the family together with quiet fortitude and determination. Life was full of strong people and unrelenting energy, but it wasn't always easy. The Youngs made a daring choice in June 1963 that would alter Angus's life forever. Like thousands of others, they signed up for the UK's £10 migrant scheme, which offered a government-sponsored way to Australia in exchange for a little sum and the promise of opportunity and sunlight. It was hardly an opulent trip to the other side of the globe. After they got there, the family was put in a migrant hostel designed for refugees, which had limited amenities and little room. Notwithstanding the difficulties, the relocation provided a priceless opportunity for a new beginning. They eventually made their home in Burwood, a peaceful Sydney suburb. Although their new home was small, it allowed the young children to freely explore their environment and themselves. Many of his siblings, including Malcolm, who would later co-form a CDC, would spend hours playing soccer outside or interacting with neighborhood children. But Angus discovered a different rhythm. He preferred the coziness of his room, where he could immerse himself in music, and he tended to favor solitude. Angus picked up a cheap guitar in that tiny room and began learning on his own. Neither books nor instructors taught him. Instead, he spent hours analyzing records while listening to the radio and imitating Chuck Berry's and the Beatles riffs. It was obsession, not discipline, that made his fingers accustomed to the fretboard. He played until his ears could predict every sound and his fingers hurt. The core of what AC/DC would eventually stand for was that unpolished, emotionally charged, and unrefined musicianship. Burwood was not just a place where music was evolving. The iconic look of AC/DC was born during a typical backyard jam session. Seeing that the youngest child was still little for his age, Angus's sister Margaret gave him his old-school tie and shorts and advised him to wear them while performing. Angus's reputation as the untouchable schoolboy developed as AC/DC started to ascend through the ranks of the rock. Beneath the facade, however, was a guy intensely protective of his family, particularly his brother Malcolm, who had always been more than just a bandmate and devoted to his heritage. His rock was him. Angus is a very quiet man with a heartfelt farewell performance for his brother Malcolm under his rock-solid stage demeanor. What was the driving force behind their most successful record to date? And how did the brothers combine their love, devotion, and hardship throughout the years into a single, farewell song? The sound of Angus Young's guitar fills stadiums, yet his private life is remarkably silent. Angus has long embraced a stable, private life away from the spotlight. In a world where romances between rock stars frequently terminate quickly, his long-lasting union with Ellen Van Lochem, a Dutch native, in the early 1980s, stands out. Together, they have created a life away from the media craze. Their time is divided between peaceful homes in the UK the Netherlands, and Australia, giving Angus the seclusion he has always cherished. Angus maintains a strict schedule despite his unrelenting stage intensity. He didn't ever drink, a decision that set him apart from many of his contemporaries in the music industry from the beginning. His one obvious vice is still smoking. Yet, despite this, he has escaped serious health problems and is still performing quite well into his senior years. He stays away from celebrity culture, avoids social media, and rarely does interviews. In many respects, Angus has always prioritized his music over his notoriety. When he brought AC/DC back into the studio for what would turn out to be a very emotional project in 2020, that dedication was evident. When Power Up came out in November of that year, it wasn't your typical record. It was a resuscitation of the band's energy as well as a personal pledge made by Angus to his elder brother Malcolm. Before Malcolm's fight with dementia took over, the two had been writing together in silence for years. Instead of allowing those unutilized riffs to die out, Angus revived them and built an entire album around their last melodic exchanges. Reassembling the original lineup was no easy task. In the past, Brian Johnson had to step aside due to hearing problems. Cliff Williams was no longer active. Phil Rudd had been in legal hot water. However, the band came back together under Angus' gentle direction, discovering fresh vitality and well-known tones. Power Up was a huge hit, reaching the top of the charts everywhere. But it was more than just business to Angus. Emotional closure was achieved. With Power Up, Angus gave fans a look into the connection that had always driven AC/DC in addition to fresh songs. He never showed signs of sorrow. Rather, he paid tribute to Malcolm in the most honorable way he knew how, by playing loud, unrepentant rock that was inspired by the very riffs they had once composed together in a quiet room. Angus' impact is becoming more and more enduring as younger generations learn about AC/DC and seasoned supporters keep coming back. His sound has never been softer, or he has never followed trends. AC/DC has endured because of his dedication to authentic rock and roll, which is based on feel, rhythm, and simplicity. Angus did more than just keep the band going with Power Up. He made sure that its passion and family-based heart will always be there.